Hey everybody, welcome to F1 or F Off, your audio pit stop for F1 news and race reviews. I'm your host Gabe.
Hey guys, and I'm Idris.
How you doing, Idris?
I'm doing well.
How was your weekend?
It was good. It was action-packed, man. Let's see, went to the zoo on Friday. It was really fun, and it actually hailed while we were out there. So,
oh yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Crazy hail out here the other day, man. I had a video of it. It looked like it was snow on the ground. It was crazy, and there was like 3 giant thunderclaps smacks too, which like in Portland you don't get.
Yeah.
So I was sitting in my room taking like a break, and it's just and I'm just like ooh, and I like go outside, and it was hailing. How thick was the hail?
Oh, it was kind of small. I would say probably like pebble size, but I mean, a lot of it coming down at the same time is just really intense, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the last time I saw hail was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, even pebble size is just like
a
lot. I'm having a pretty busy weekend. I'm still working on a bunch of comics. My Wacom tablet's been acting up a little bit, so I've been dealing with like technical problems and technical gremlins here and there, but it is what it is. I'll get through it just fine. But
did you try restarting your computer?
Yes, I tried turning it off and on again. I tried restarting the drivers and doing all the software things.
Yeah.
None of that made any big changes. But I purchased a small little thing that makes me very happy. And as you know, you and I like to drink a lot of tea.
Oh,
and
big time.
I bought a reusable like chef's squeeze bottle because I get this really nice wildflower honey. Okay. And it's a little bit less viscous than like normal honey it does. So it kind of pours out a little quicker.
Yeah.
And it's really, really delicious. And if anybody else out there who has like allergies, one of the tricks is if you consume honey from like your local bees, like because they pollinate with the flowers locally, like it'll actually kind of can help your allergy reactions. So I always try and stick to that. But yeah, it's just you gotta love the simple things, the little simple things that enhance your life.
Yeah, back when we lived in California, there was this local honey shop we would always go to, and that was for that exact same reason. Just anytime you move to a new area, get the honey ASAP because that will stop all the allergies. And you can also get, I think it's pollen too, and just throw that in your tea along with the honey.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I just have a jar of bees and just like invite just one into bees. Here, come sit on my, pollinate with my tea.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're not here to talk about bees.
No siree.
No, but we are going to talk about some buzz. Because I was thinking about this, and you and I had this conversation, and I realized, part of our intro is that we are here for being your audio pit stop for F1 news and race reviews. We've mostly done race reviews up until this point.
Yeah, and interviews.
So
we should add that to the title. It should be your audio pit stop for F1 news, interviews, and race reviews.
That is a mouthful, and
it is.
We'll try it because I like it. But yeah, I'd like to. I think it's going to be nice for us to talk about some news, especially because we've had 4 weeks off, and that was due to the China Grand Prix being canceled, right?
Yeah.
Baku is coming up this week, but it's been quite a while, and I think everybody's getting a little restless.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I have a question. I don't know if you noticed, but okay, here's something that we should put out there really quick, just because I want to get it over with before we forget. So you and I started a TikTok.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
You want to explain the problem that we're having with our TikTok, Idris, and maybe we can get somebody to help us?
Did you have the same issue? Oh God,
it's the same issue on my phone. Yeah.
Same issue on your phone. Okay, so we made our TikTok last weekend, and we were like, all right, we're gonna connect with the youths. Okay.
Yes, the youths.
And we're gonna upload reels and stuff. And
we want Zoomers, not Boomers. No, we're kidding. We love Boomers
we want Zoomers, not Boomers, but not on Zoom. We want the boom.
Yeah.
So we have a TikTok, and we were trying to just follow other like F1 related channels, and every single time we hit follow, it shows you that it's following it, and then you go to your feed to look at who you follow, and nothing shows up outside of Donut Media.
Yeah.
Which I'm really happy that we're able to follow Donut Media.
We have 2 now.
Wait, who's the second one?
Donut Media and the official F1 page.
Oh my God. So do you have to click it 20 times?
I have no idea. I do not know. I don't understand, because what I was doing is I heard from a very reliable source that when it comes to filtering your feed in TikTok, as you scroll through, you like a thing and you can subscribe to them. And if you see something that's in your page that is not related to the content that you want to do,
Mhm.
It's apparently more effective to block the page than it is to like dislike it or to say I don't want to see this.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
this person that I was talking to has filtered through their TikTok in over a course of several years to where like now it's literally perfect for them with their
Mhm.
specific interests. So as I was
Okay.
going through, I was liking all the official F1 pages. I was liking anything that was very
Okay.
specifically F1 content. But as I would go through, I would go through like 3 Ferrari posts and it would show that I need to like click on the follow
On the
every
follow
time.
button,
And I
right?
did it
Yeah.
every time. And then I would go and look and it's not there. So I don't
Yeah,
know if
I know what's
TikTok's
going on.
just out to get us or if this is just
Maybe
some weird archaic setting. I mean, what is it?
yeah, I don't know. It could possibly be that like, "Oh, well, you're a new account and you can't follow anyone." But then that's stupid. The whole point of me joining TikTok, I would wanna follow accounts to, like, look at content. So, I don't know. We're
Mm,
trying to figure it out. If anyone knows, just hit us up, let us know. Preferably
yeah.
on TikTok.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let us know on it. Maybe it'll force its way through. And I got kind of a laugh because this person I was talking to, I was just like, yeah, maybe I'll just like call tech support, and they're just like tech support
Yeah.
for TikTok. There's like there's no such thing. Anyway, yeah, we definitely are trying
Wild.
to do a little bit more with our social media, so that's where our foray into TikTok has come from. But
Yeah, and if you guys have any recommendations of what you would like to see and what you think would be cool, let us know. Like, we are a blank canvas.
yes, ready to be sculpted into the modern social landscape of Formula One.
Yeah, speaking of sculptures and art and stuff, one of the hot things going on right now is AI generated art.
Mhm.
And Formula One had an interesting foray into the AI realm this last week. Gabe, you wanna let the folks know what happened?
Yeah. So the German equivalent of the Inquirer decided
Yes.
that they were going to make a AI generated interview with Michael Schumacher, which I'm sure you all know, but in case you don't, Michael Schumacher had a massive skiing accident several years ago. And there's a lot of speculation on the state of his health and his condition, but obviously their family has kept all of that information pretty close in wraps. They don't talk about it because it's very sensitive. You know, they do physical therapy with him. They keep them very close. Only a few small group of friends go around to spend time with him.
Mhm.
But this tabloid decided it'd be a good idea to fake an interview with him by somehow AI generating an interview and response. And
Disgusting.
immediately like the family was like, yeah, no, absolutely not. And like the front of the article didn't say that it was AI generated. It said it in the article at the end. So like I guess at least they put that in there. But even still, I mean,
Just gross.
just so gross. You know what this reminds me of too? This is sort of
What?
related to this, and you might laugh, but
Mhm.
like this is kind of reminds me of how television and movies now are all just remaking everything rather than
Oh,
making new
yeah.
stuff.
Ugh. Yeah.
It's like, where does this stop? Like, do they have an AI generated interview with Fangio? Like, do they do like, oh, like let's relive the greatest hits of this? You know, like, would they do they do an AI generated race from history with different drivers in a modern era? I know there's people out there that'd be super excited to see that.
Mhm.
I am not one of those people.
Yeah.
I am like, just make new things, do
Right.
new stuff. So, like, making a fake interview with somebody who is still alive and is in a very delicate situation,
Yeah.
this is not the
I
way.
yeah, this ain't it. I think the thing that's the most revolting about it is the fact that imagine you are like Michael Schumacher's family, right? And like you just suddenly, like, your text is getting blown up with like,
Mhm.
oh, your dad gave an interview, all this kind of stuff, and you're just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's just for them to just completely ignore the family's wishes, right?
Right.
And just go ahead and do that is just so gross, and it's really like shame on them for doing that. That just represents, I guess, the era that we're entering into when it comes to AI generated things. So Gabe and I have a lot of discussions about AI generated everything, right? Whether it's like art, any kind of media. So this is something that's kind of like very near and dear to our hearts just because we debate this a lot. And this is the exact reason why AI gets such a bad rap, because people just go and do things like this and they're just, oh, well, it'll be really fun. And just like, well, did you think about the ramifications of what you're doing?
Yeah.
Did you think about the emotions of the family? Who knows what they're experiencing right now, with everything with Michael, to just throw this on top of that.
I have very strong opinions against it for many reasons, especially coming from somebody who has a lot of family members who are artists,
Sure.
and also somebody who is constantly baffled by how gullible people are online when it comes to like a fake video being produced. And they're just like, whoa, how did that happen? There's
Yeah.
one I remember of, they had a panoramic view moving across like this landscape. And like somebody was like, this only happens one day a year. And then there was the moon, which was like the size of the Death Star, like flowing across the sky, blocking the sun temporarily, and then coming out on the other side and landing. And it was like a real time shot too. And everybody was like, oh man, when does that happen? I need to go there. They'd fail to realize that one, if the moon was that close, it would completely destroy so many things about the planet. Two, the moon does not rotate. It's landlocked. So this thing was rotating in the middle of the air. And like, how fast do you think a day flies by? Like, but people were acting as though this was a real thing that they could go and do. Because, I mean, yeah, like the presentation was really nice. It was very visually striking and like it was very detailed. But this is the path that we're like leading down. I think AI, we can get into a whole conversation. I don't really want to.
Yeah.
But I think that one thing that you and I can both agree on is that AI is best when it's used as a tool to
Yes.
either
Completely.
supplement or to kind of conceptualize things that
Yeah.
then can be
Generated
added
by
onto
hand.
or
Right.
changed or
Mhm.
like it would be, what it would be great for? It'd be great for storyboarding for stories. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like
Yep.
art, like writers coming up trying to break a story on a show, using those to generate like certain scenes or things as just conceptual art to use for like, because
Yeah.
sometimes they just like little scribble little things. And obviously like, that's, if you're an artist, you can do that. And most artists do that generally because like they make decisions that an AI generation is not going to make for them. So they
Mhm.
do it themselves. But if you're like a writer in a writer's room making a cartoon show and you just need some quick edits or quick storyboards, that'd be a great tool to use for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think people are looking at it as an end in and of itself as far as like a final product. And that's where I think it starts to get
Yeah.
fishy, especially when you're trying to interview people who can't be interviewed or
Like,
dead. It's like, let's
yeah,
interview
it's
Abraham Lincoln after his experience at the Ford Theater. Like,
yeah.
what are they
Oh,
gonna do?
ooh.
Like,
Ooh.
what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and someone would absolutely do that,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh
Like that's going to become a whole genre of just media, AI generated comedy, AI generated personas from the past, and just ridiculous. The update to this story though, I did see earlier today that the writer of this article was fired from the publication. So,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
but I guess it kind of asks the question too of like, clearly eyeballs were on that story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
how how did it make it through, and then there's public backlash, and now it's like, oh well, actually, okay, the guy who did it is fired now. Like, come on,
Yeah.
like have better standards.
Yeah. You'd think that somebody at some point would have been like, is this a good idea? Did we ask the family about this? I mean,
Yeah,
it's not like some random dude. It is Michael Schumacher.
right.
Like, he is a German sports legend.
Yeah,
Like, you think that was going to slip under the radar, but hey, you know what? This is probably, I'd be willing to bet this is probably what they were doing. I bet you they were looking at it as any publicity is
yeah,
good publicity.
good publicity. Yeah,
It's unfortunate
probably.
that somebody had to lose their job over it, but I mean, hey, like, it's not worth it, man. Like, you think people are going to read your publication after doing something like this? It's like, I don't really think that's going to work in
Yeah,
your favor. You know what I mean? Looking at that tabloid, would you agree that the internet's equivalent of a tabloid magazine is like the YouTube thumbnails or like things where it's just like
the reactionary ones.
yeah, like the big reaction faces.
Yeah,
I love I said this to you before, we talk about in the guitar industry, there's always like the videos that are like, the guitar industry hates this guy because of this one weird trick,
yeah, yeah,
those are like the equivalent of tabloids now. Like,
yeah,
that's what we've got. So
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
I would say future going forward, if you see something that looks really suspicious like that, yeah, make sure you check your sources and don't get duped by some AI interviews, because
yeah.
I guarantee you this is just one of several that will probably come out
Oh
down
yeah,
the pipeline.
absolutely.
Apart from AI generated interview content, one thing that you cannot generate via AI is Formula One races and Formula One drama. I'm
Not
suppose you could
yet.
probably try. Yeah, not yet. Um, But on a serious note, there's a lot of really wacky stuff happening, especially at Mercedes. Did you see there was something I read today that Hamilton was having problems where, obviously the Mercedes car is not where it should be
Hmm.
technically, and Lewis was kind of upset because he's like, the team didn't listen to me and they didn't develop the car right. And I watched the technical video, and maybe you can help explain this too.
Mm.
Part of the problem that Lewis is Hamilton with having with the feel of the car is because the zero side pods, the way that they had to fit those in, they had to push the driver's position further up towards the front wheels,
Okay.
and Hamilton said that makes it feel like the car is kind of on its toes, and so it makes the
Hmm.
rear feel sort of like not planted enough because he's less in the middle of the car, and that's something that you can't just change
Oh,
overnight.
yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a packaging issue at that point,
yeah,
right?
and there's that, yeah, because they can't just completely switch to the other side pod thing because they would have to
Hmm.
fundamentally change the whole car, and
Yeah.
you're not really allowed to do that in Formula One, or else teams would be doing it constantly. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because they just have to fix their working prototype.
Hmm.
But yeah, I guess they're bringing some suspension upgrades to Baku. They're going to hopefully fix some of that balancing issues.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even still, just the physics of it is really difficult to overcome, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how do you fix that?
So hearing that, how you just described it, if you are pushing the driver towards the front, whether they are closer to the front or the back, you're going to have some kind of balance change, right? You're going to change the center of gravity, right? And you want to make sure that, I mean, for Lewis, right, he has been used to driving a championship caliber car where the CG, or the center of gravity, was in a very particular location for like years and years and years, right? And he was used to it. He was tied into how that, like, the beast underneath him felt, right? And for them to change it, yeah, that would definitely take some adjusting, right? And I can understand, like, think about it for you, right? Like, imagine you're riding a bicycle, right? And you're sitting down normally. That's how the bicycle's meant to be driven, right? Or ridden. But if you stand up and you are leaning towards the front, right? You're adjusting that pivot point, right? You're adjusting that point where you have a good understanding and feel of what the rear tire is experiencing versus the front tire, right? Like, you might be more tuned with what's going on at the front, but then you kind of lost information, lost feel for what's going on at the rear. So that, I think that is what he is describing there.
Yeah.
And I can understand how that would definitely make things weird.
Yeah, or it's like if you're in like on like a shopping cart, if you were
Yeah.
to ever lean on like a shopping cart, like if you're in the front, or maybe one of those flat ones that you get at like Home Depot,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
when you're facing more of that rear portion of the car, like you kind of get that. It's literally almost like weight distribution. It's like you get that, you can feel both sides. The further you are away from one end of the car, the less you're going to feel about feel in that opposite
Exactly.
way. So
Yep.
yeah, it's very interesting how, like, it doesn't seem like it would be a huge difference, but it's just enough difference that Lewis just
Yeah.
feels like right on top of those front wheels. And therefore it's not that they can't drive the car. They
Hmm.
clearly they can drive it because
Right.
they were finishing races, but
Yeah.
there is that whole thing about being able to push it to its limit.
Right.
And you can't push a car to its limit if it feels like you're just darting around on its toes, you know?
Right.
And these are legitimate concerns that Lewis has. And he is a 7-time world champion.
Yep.
He knows what he's talking about. He even said, like, I've driven plenty of cars, but there was an interview with a former F1 team manager. It was on a Spanish publication. He called Lewis Hamilton a spoiled little boy for complaining about stuff,
Jeez.
and like saying that like Hamilton is fed up, and if he doesn't win, he's like a spoiled little boy. You either win or you break the toys. And it's like, dude, I'm
Yeah. I don't
sorry, man.
know.
Like, that's unfair. Like, it really is. I mean, we've talked about Max complaining about things, and we talk about drivers who complain about stuff. But honestly, what Hamilton is concerned about is, like, he has a right to be concerned. It is a
Right.
fundamental problem with the car. It's not like, oh, the teams gave my teammate upgrades and they didn't give them to me, or oh, my team isn't listening to how I like the car set up. Like, we're talking about a fundamental problem with the car
Yeah.
that can't be fixed at this point. So when they talk about having a long-term solution as far
Hmm.
as fixing the car, because they say it's going to be like a long-term project, what are the kind of timelines when it comes to, like,
Mm.
when you're engineering something, you're putting something together, if you discover a fundamental problem in how it's
Oof.
designed, like, what's the kind of time frame that it takes to make a correction like that? Because you obviously have to take steps really far back. Do you
Yeah.
prioritize trying to fix it, or do you just, like, what point do you scrap it?
I guess it depends, right? The thing is when you are building physical products like such like an F1 car, right? You want to make sure you have your whole ideation phase, design phase, build phase, test phase, iterate phase kind of like locked in, like kind of like years ahead, right? Especially for these guys because they operate on year schedules, right?
Right.
So what sucks for Mercedes in particular is that they have locked themselves into the zero side pod concept, right? When the concept itself started showing that it was not as promising on the performance side, that's when they started scratching their heads and saying, okay, what can we do to stop the bleeding, right? That's the, like, what's your mitigation plan, right? So that's when you start bringing out components like, oh, well, maybe we can put something, we can add some element to the front wing. If it's within the regs, we can add some element to the rear wing or, change up the DRS, maybe adjust the ride height, small things that you implement that don't completely ruin the concept as far as it being able to achieve its maximum performance, right? You want to get as much out of that concept as possible, right? But
Mhm.
there definitely is a point where you need to just say, we are done with this, or we're going to do something completely radically different with this concept that effectively you are effectively kind of done with it in a certain sense, right?
Yeah.
For Mercedes, that point should have been the end of last season, right? Or actually, honestly, midway through last season, where they were just like, this isn't working. We need to readjust our thinking. So, because of the turnaround time that's required for F1 teams to come up with a concept, build it, test it, and testing it is like in the wind tunnel, CFD, preseason testing, the first few races of the season. Once you get to a certain point within that test cycle, you need to kind of make a really strong decision and firm decision about what you're going to do. And again, I think what sucks for Mercedes is that it seems like they wanted to make like another tweak and give it another go for the zero side pod
Yeah.
concept. It may have been a bit too late,
Hmm.
or they may have stuck around with this concept a bit too long. We'll see. Maybe there's some kind of potential they can tap out of it that we have not yet seen, and that remains to
Yeah.
be seen. Maybe the upgrades that they're bringing to Baku, suspension stuff might help out. I know Imola is typically a point in the calendar where a lot of teams bring on some major upgrades to kind of see what the car can eke out for the rest of the season. But I don't know. Mercedes is in a particularly tough spot, and
Hmm.
it doesn't help that F1 has such a short turnaround time as far as the development of a new product goes. So
Right.
yeah, like I'm really excited to see what happens because it's either going to go really well or it's going to be more of the same. Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I'd say for the sake of the sport and the season in general, I think we're lucky that Mercedes is the only team that has like a really bad sort of package that's like really bad. I
Mm.
mean,
I mean,
McLaren's is not great, yeah.
McLaren is pretty rough. Yeah.
But I would say like McLaren's issues don't necessarily stem from like a design point that was really off. Like I think it's just more or less just an accumulation of
Hmm.
several different kinds of levels of components that could potentially be altered and fixed in their favor.
Yeah.
I think it's the difference between like if somebody asked you to design an apple and you designed an orange,
Hmm.
you can't really manipulate an orange to be an apple, but if
Right.
you designed a pear, it's sort of close. Like you can
It's
sort of
better.
massage it
Yeah.
to like make it be like, oh well, this is closer to an apple in these kind of ways. It's got little
Hmm.
seeds and it's relatively the same shape. It's like that kind of difference. It's
Yeah. That's a good example. I'm
yeah.
gonna have to use that.
One thing I was going to talk about, I was curious what you think, is I saw somebody rendered the 2020 F1 cars to be the
Yes,
size of the 2003 F1 cars.
dude. The
And
2003s look so much better.
well, there's a reason why I'm curious about this because it's funny, like over the course of F1, like they've gone to bigger, like they've just been getting progressively bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And now they're the biggest they've ever been. And I think that the size of these cars is having an effect on the racing,
Absolutely.
especially in the street circuits. And if F1's going to be keep putting in all these street circuits, they got to do something to change the cars because these big wide cars do their best on big wide circuits.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So like Monaco could probably benefit from cars that were smaller.
Yep.
I mean, are we approaching a future where like they have two car concepts? One is like a smaller version for street circuits, the other one is a bigger one for,
Mm.
big circuits? Or did they just go back to using the smaller package?
Hmm.
Is there like a safety issue? Like I mean, I don't know. I can't really speculate too much on whether or not they would be safer or less safe if they were smaller. I
Yeah.
can only imagine that so much of that is just boils down to the structural integrity of the car. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. I would say it's partly safety. Yeah, because you'd be able to pack in more elements for more safety feature elements, right? But I think the primary driver as to why these cars have gotten so large is because of the hybrid engine, right? The MGUK and the MGUH. I think just like batteries are huge. I could be completely wrong on this.
Mm,
I'm actually really curious about this. I'll go ahead and take a look at some schematics, but I think a lot of it is from the hybrid engine system
hmm.
and just these engines being a bit larger. But
Yeah.
there's no reason you couldn't go down to the size of a 2003 F1 car and have all those bells and whistles as well. Because you're
Yeah.
100% right. It would completely improve the racing on street circuits, like Monaco, especially, right?
Yeah.
That's the one because Monaco is the one that I think everyone you think F1, you think Monaco, right?
Right.
It's like that is the track on the calendar that will never leave. Like I don't care what, right? And it would make a lot of sense to change the cars versus opening up the track, right?
Yeah.
Or adding a Joker lap.
Right.
Like as cool as a Joker lap is, I would much rather see just people trying to pass each other on track, like trying to get overtake each other on merit versus
Mhm.
oh they had a bad Joker lap, right?
Right.
Because the thing about a Joker lap is how long is too long, how short is too short for a Joker lap. You have to find the happy medium, and I don't think you figure that out just running it just one time. Going to the size of 2003 Formula One cars would just pay dividends for the sport.
Yeah. I mean, Monaco was always difficult to pass in, but it's
Yeah.
even more difficult now because these cars are
Yeah.
so wide. And I think
It's
if
not
it's
happening
like I
there.
said, if you keep introducing these street circuits, it's only going to be continuing to be a problem. It's not going to
Yeah.
get any better. But also, speaking of potential safety problems, the other bit of news that I want to discuss with you is this problem that they're having with these sausage curbs.
Oh man.
There was an F4
Yeah.
driver who recently got into a problem where he had spinal injuries. Adam Fitzgerald. He apparently fractured 3 vertebrae in his back. And it was because
Jeez.
the curb launched his car and he slammed down onto the track.
Oh my god.
Um, Everybody has been hopping on social media because it is a problem, and it is not only just a problem of safety, but it's also just like it ties into the problem with like track limits, is they're putting these things into place to try and prevent the cars from breaching the track, to discourage them from doing it. If it was to potentially slow the car down, pitching it into the air over over a curb, that's
Yeah.
not really solving the problem. And this, I think, is part of an ongoing discussion, that I think we briefly touched on in previous episodes. And that is
Yeah.
like when it comes to runoff areas and stuff, like what do you do? Do you use gravel? Do you use
Yeah.
like, the French circuit, the Paul Ricard circuit? All those big lines, those are all
Mhm.
like different abrasion
Yes.
surfaces.
Yeah. And you
Um,
don't want to go out there. It'll shred your tires.
yeah. And so I think isn't that really the problem though? Or that's really the question is like, how do you implement a safety
Mhm.
measure that's also not going to completely destroy the car and destroy the drivers? And that's the problem we're having, I think.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I think it's got to be a mix between gravel and different grade, like more like abrasive surfaces, right? Because you go out there and you do not, you don't want to be out there for long, right? And I think at least if you go into like a graded abrasive surface, it sucks. You might have to come in for a pit, but at least you can still race. I wanted to talk real quick about sausage curbs because I don't think people understand and recognize how incredibly dangerous they are. There was a Formula 3 race. I think it was the Italian Grand Prix back in 2019, Monza, and Alexander Peroni went over a sausage curb. His car was literally launched into
Mhm.
the air.
Yeah. Oh my God. I just saw it.
It is terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
His
Like,
car
yeah. When
lands
we
on
say,
top of the fence. Like, yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
when we say launched, that is not hyperbole. Like,
Yeah,
that
no,
is,
it's like you're playing like Grand Theft Auto San Andreas and you're trying to get like those trick points you can get, and you just launch off a ramp and you're trying to like cross a
dude,
canyon.
it's not even that. It is like if you're playing Grand Theft Auto and then all of a sudden the game glitches on you and
Yeah,
it just yeets your car into the air
yeah.
unexpectedly. Like,
That's much more apt description. Yeah,
because that's literally what it looks like.
yeah.
Like it just looks
And
like that would not normally have happened. But yeah, he literally
okay,
just smacks that car.
so are you watching? So when you watch the video, look at how his car lands, right? And then there's a replay they play looking from the front,
Uh-huh.
and do you see that the marshals almost get taken out by the car?
Yeah. Yeah,
This
I
is
slowed it down.
Yeah, it's terrifying, all because of a sausage curb. It literally launches the cars into the air.
You
It
know,
is extremely dangerous.
yeah.
They need to go. Like, I'd rather grass be out there. you know?
Right. Well, it's funny. It's like we made all these strives to make the cars more structurally sound, and we have like the Halo device and everything. And then they put these sausage curbs in. They're just like, all right,
Right.
well, let's test how good these other safety features are, and just chuck them at the
Yeah.
scenery. It's like, dude,
It's
this is
absurd.
not like we're supposed to be doing less of this. I mean, and
Yeah.
oh my, and dude, that was what was F3,
That's F3.
F4?
That's an F3
Imagine if that
race.
was an F1 car doing
Dude,
that.
dead. Someone would have died from that. Absolutely.
Ugh, that's just yeah,
Yeah.
it's so insane. I don't know what the solution is, but there has to be some way. I mean, I would say if you're obviously we put in penalties if you breach track limits, right? There's like
Yeah.
a time penalty. I'm almost wondering if it's worth putting in a really intense abrasive surface to slow the car down and
Mhm.
potentially ruin the tires. So long as they don't ruin them to a point to where they're going to get a puncture, but maybe just
Right.
enough to where they have to like scrub off the surface again or potentially have to pit in
Right.
order to, because yeah, it's just not, it's not a viable solution. It's
Yeah.
really not.
That'd be much better than launching cars into the air. That's
Yeah.
for sure. And
Yeah.
the worst part about this is that the FAA will not do anything until someone dies.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Isn't
and
that,
and
yeah.
God forbid that happens. You don't want to see that.
That's absolutely terrible.
Yeah. And but they could so easily do that. They could
Yeah.
so easily fix this problem.
Right.
Just remove the
Well,
sausage curbs.
yeah.
Done.
Talking about yeeting cars into a wall, there's this whole thing I want you to explain. I want you to talk about because you brought this
Mhm.
to my attention. This whole thing about Felipe Massa
Oh
and
yeah. Oh boy.
the fallout from Crashgate. Because I have
Yeah.
some thoughts on this, and
Yeah.
so bring us up to speed about what the deal is with all that.
Okay, so this happened. I think this was about a couple weeks back. So actually, real quick before we hop into it, you want to give just like a quick 10-second spiel on what Crashgate is?
Sure. So, 2008 Singapore Grand Prix was the first Singapore Grand Prix. It was also, I think, the first like night race in the sports history. So potential to be a really historic race, but it was made very much so historic because there is a conspiracy amongst the Renault race team where essentially what happened was the two drivers were Fernando Alonso, who had came back from McLaren, and Nelson Piquet Jr. Fernando was he had just he had just come into the pits and just changed tires. He was on fresh tires, and he was running well within the top 10. And they manufactured a crash where they had Nelson Piquet artificially, like he deliberately crashed his car on the front straight, which was going to automatically pull out a safety car. And so what happened was when the safety car came out, because Fernando Alonso had just pitted, he didn't have to pit again. And so all of the people that were ahead of him came into the pits to change tires and refuel and do what they're going to do. And so that positioned Fernando Alonso to be in front of the pack. And also at that point, that Singapore Grand Prix, it's another one of those circuits where it's like, it's kind of hard to pass. So Fernando managed to finish the race and won. He won the race for Renault. And so it's this huge thing amongst the chaos of Crashgate, because we found out later that was why that crash happened. Felipe Massa had an issue in the pits where he came in to pit and he came in to refuel, and the refuel thing got stuck on the car and he ended up taking off and it pulled the fuel pump out of the thing and he was carrying it halfway down the track. But anyway, it was devastating for his points. So apparently that is something that is now being brought up as
Yeah.
a potential way to, he's looking at his legal options essentially to try and find a way to recapture points or, get some sort of monetary compensation because Renault essentially, he's claiming, screwed him out of his world
Oh,
championship win.
so it's a lot deeper than that actually.
Okay.
So FIA knew about it almost immediately after the race, right? And they knew that the race had been fixed effectively, right? Bernie Eccleston at the time said that they didn't decide to do anything. Why was that? Because there was a rule that a world championship classification after the FIA awards ceremony at the end of the year was untouchable. And this is Bernie Eccleston's own words. Hamilton was presented with the trophy and everything was fine. So all of this information, by the way, came out because Eccleston was interviewed recently and was just open in his mouth, just talking about everything. He hasn't been seen as kosher with the FIA and F1 anymore, just because he doesn't like what Liberty Media is doing with it, and he doesn't like that it's all about social media and yada yada yada. He's not happy with how things are going. So he's opened his mouth talking about things, and he mentions this bit, and so now. Because of that, Massa is now investigating whether he can have that lost, and that's in quotes, title overturned. Given that Mosley and Eccleston, Mosley is the FIA president, Max Mosley from that time,
Mhm.
that they knew about the scandal, the whole race fix before the 2008 FIA awards. And if they knew that, then they could have done something about it to potentially give that title to Massa, right? This is tricky. I think Felipe Massa's not, he's a smart guy. I don't think he thinks that, we would go back in time and actually, retroactively remove points from Lewis or however it would work out that he ends up winning the title, right? I don't think he thinks that he can get the title. I think what he is after here is that legally, he can bring this out into the public and all the information is out there and he could be rewarded financially from this and compensated
Mhm.
financially from all of this fallout. So it sucks, right? Because now this is a really interesting question. If you say that this happened and this shouldn't have happened and that we need to take a look at the championship, well, then do you do the same thing for the Abu Dhabi 2021 race where
Mhm.
that was not handled, according to the typical FIA safety car rules, when
Mhm.
the safety car was initiated? I think it was like lap 55 or, one of the last few remaining laps.
Right.
Do you go back to 1994 with Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher
Mhm.
when Schumacher just crashed right into Damon Hill, right? Crashed him out of the race.
Right.
I don't know. Like how far back do you how far
Yeah,
back do you go?
it's very nuanced conversation. For me, I think part of this is like I understand financial compensation for Felipe. I can understand where he would be coming at from there. I think if he was trying to sort of retroactively win a world championship title from it, that's where it gets a little tricky because I mean, imagine if Crashgate happened and Felipe did not have that incident in the pits. He may have very well won the championship,
Hmm.
but his team had a problem in the pits. And, you can say that the artificial crash caused him to come into the pit lane and then that is what caused the problem. But you think about all the other teams that came in and pitted and didn't have this problem and came out the other side. That's where it starts to get kind of complicated because it's like you can't blame Renault on a Ferrari pit mistake.
Right.
But you can blame them on, basically throwing a wrench into the works of the whole situation. So
Right. It's just messy.
it is very messy. And it's I don't know. It's funny how this kind of prompts all of this. I mean, there's probably a lot of stuff that happened in Formula One behind the tables, behind the counters, that people didn't know about
Yeah.
and that could have had profound changes to
Yep.
the way outcomes of championships and race wins happen. And so, you have to really kind of balance on is it worth pursuing, or is it better to just like leave it to the thralls of history
Yeah.
and just continue to move forward? Or do you AI generate a new 2008 race where Felipe Massa wins and Lewis Hamilton loses, and then just claim that this is the actual footage of what happened and that everybody was drugged by the government or something?
Hmm.
These people, the tin hat, folks out there
Yeah.
they'll come up with everything to try and justify something, especially if AI starts to come into the picture.
Yeah.
But
Ugh.
yeah. So to kind of wrap up our little news segment, one thing I want to end with is do a little preview of Baku because it's a new race that's coming up. Are you excited about it? Are you looking forward to this one? Like,
Yeah, I do like Baku. So it was 2016 that Baku was introduced, or 2017. And I remember we were texting back and forth about it. We were just like, oh, yeah, we'll see how it is. The first year we raced at Baku, it was not that exciting. I think it was because the drivers were trying to figure it out.
yeah,
Where can I really push it? Where do I need to slow down? Speaking of which, Charles Leclerc really needs to think about things for this weekend because he always hits that same spot, dude. I feel
yeah.
so bad. Like,
That's a tough corner, though. I mean, it's
it
scary to
is.
see. It's
And there's also
iconic, but it's scary.
it is. And like I think it's because there's like sunlight that hits the driver's eyes when you come through when as you're going through that corner. There
Mm.
must be. Or there must be like a banana peel from Mario Kart because every single time he
Well,
just bins it
yeah.
there.
Well, the interesting thing about Baku as far as race and incidents go is that the most notable things that I remember happening in Baku actually happened under safety car. Like
Yes.
Roman
Yes.
Grosjean warming his tires and then slamming into the wall, or
Oh.
Hamilton brake checking Sebastian and then
Yeah.
Sebastian like running up and like smacking him
Sideswiping
with
him.
his car.
Yeah.
Yeah, or Daniel Ricciardo backing into
Into
I think it was
Max.
Marzipan, or was it like, well, he crashed into Max at the first turn on the one race, but then when he was driving for Renault, he reversed, he like went to into the slip road. Instead of
Mhm.
doing a burnout and spinning around, he tried to back up and he ran into like
Ooh.
Marzipan or somebody to try and get back out on the track, and just like, basically ruined his race.
Yikes.
But the one thing I do want to talk about with Baku this time around is that there's these speculations where they're talking about changing things to the sprint race, where they do a qualifying session for the sprint and then another
Mm.
qualifying session for the race, which I don't, well, we'll see, we talked about this, right?
Mhm.
Because I said, I think my suggestion originally was that they should do the normal qualifying session
Mhm.
and then do a reverse grid of that qualifying for the sprint race, and then award points, and then just start the race based on the original qualifying grid. But apparently
Sure.
what they're suggesting doing is doing a qualifier for the sprint race, and then doing the sprint race, and then doing a qualifying session for the actual race. Like what's the whole idea behind this? Because the sprint race is supposed to decide the
Qualifying.
qualifying positions, right?
Mhm. So it sounds like they're removing there are going to be 2 free practices. So I would assume it's FP1 and FP2 on Friday. Then you get sprint qualifying Saturday morning, then sprint race in the evening, and then
So like essentially, if
okay.
it sounds like
It's
it's
a
like
it's a
three.
mini race weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a mini race weekend, which to me, I don't like that. That sounds redundant. That's why I'm saying, if you're going to do something like this, then you do a qualifying session, then you take that qualifying,
Just do reverse grid
lineup
for the
and just
sprint.
reverse grid it,
Yeah.
do the sprint race at
Yeah.
like half points, and then you just do the regular Grand Prix with the original qualifying. Like that way you can preserve your practice sessions and you still get to mix up the grid and try something new. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is
Um,
bonkers.
it's really weird. And maybe this is
Yeah.
what Max was talking about when he threatened to like leave the sport or something. Which I'm like, yeah, man, like I don't blame you if this is what they're gonna do. Like,
Yeah.
good lord. They're obsessed with trying this. And honestly, like I said before, I think you and I discussed this.
Mhm.
I think that sprint races are best done on big Grand Prix circuits to have a lot of
Yes.
good passing possibility.
Yep.
Doing it on a street circuit, like if they try and do a sprint race at Monaco,
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah, processional.
Just call it a practice session. Like
Yeah.
that's all it's gonna be.
It's just a parade at that point.
Yeah. I mean, one benefit of a sprint race is to get the drivers a chance to like, race each other,
Yeah, duke it
especially if you're in the
out.
lower
Yeah.
field. But like, you're not
Yeah.
going to get that if they're just like, you're doing another quali and then a race. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I appreciate they're trying, but
Yeah. They are trying, but I don't think they're consulting with the right people about what would make an exciting product. I think an exciting product would be a reverse grid
yeah.
sprint race. Why not?
Yeah, why not? Why not? I mean, the worst that could
What
possibly happen is what could also possibly happen during the race, which a slower car runs into a faster car or a faster car runs into a slower car.
Yeah.
I mean, and that can happen in qualifying session. That can happen in any session.
Yeah.
The reverse grid, it almost feels like it's like a P90X for the drivers in some ways, where it's just like a little
Yeah.
extra workout session.
Yeah.
And like you get the drivers who are the rookies or who are the lower teams that, rather than just yielding to the faster cars as they come around, maybe they
Mhm.
get a chance to fight for position a little bit, you know?
And at this point too, maybe even throw in like make the meme a reality. Pass out the World Drivers Championship and World Constructors Championship for Formula 1.5. There you go. And it would be the people who just kill it at the sprint races.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, yeah,
Done.
yeah. Just have a reverse, a reverse grid champion or something like
Yeah.
that. Really dub the best of
Just
the
make
rest if you're gonna do
just
it.
and it should just be like a reverse Uno card.
That's what the trophy is decorated as. I think there's better ways that they can do it. I just think, it sucks that there are all of these decisions. It always feels like it's a democratic process, But a lot of times it doesn't really play out that way. It's more like one person who's like, I'm the director, so I'm determining that we're
Yeah.
doing that. And it's just like, apparently all the teams have apparently mostly signed off on this change. So
I don't
maybe
know.
they're seeing something that we don't, some
Yeah.
benefit. Who knows? I have no idea. But
Or they were all coerced into it. So
yeah, maybe, who knows? I don't really get it, but
yeah.
all right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to our first F1 news segment. You can find us anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. If you want to hit us up, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok now.
And TikTok. Yep.
And our TikTok is F1 or F off, like the other ones, right? No
Yep.
weird hyphens or anything.
Yep.
So
Yep.
F1
No
or
weird
F
things.
off, all one word, on all of those social medias, or you can email us at F1 or F off podcast at gmail.com. We really appreciate to hear from you. I also want to give a shout out to everybody who has followed us recently and who's followed our social media. Welcome. We are glad
Welcome
to
to
have
the
you on
FOOFO
board.
fam.
Yeah, the FOOFO. Yeah. That's what we're just going to put that on a shirt. That's going to be it. And honestly, give us any recommendations you have for content you want to see, and also maybe help us with our TikTok problem, so we can get that fixed. So
Please do.
please, yes.